To explain the Monroe Institute's method for achieving altered states of consciousness, known as the gateway experience, which involves brain hemisphere synchronization or hemisync, the best way to start is to briefly outline the basic mechanics behind related techniques such as hypnosis, transcendental meditation, and biofeedback. It is simplest to effectively explain what gateway is by starting with a brief description of those associated techniques that share some common elements with the gateway experience but are still distinct. This approach helps us establish a frame of reference from the beginning, providing useful concepts to explain and understand gateway by comparison as we move forward. Hypnosis. According to the theories of psychologist Ronald Stone and the biomedical engineering models of Itzhak Bentov, hypnosis is basically a technique that permits acquisition of direct access to the sensory motor cortex and pleasure centers and lower cerebral emotional portions and associated pleasure centers of the right side of the human brain following successful disengagement of the stimulus screening function of the left hemisphere of the brain. The left hemisphere of the brain is the self-cognitive, verbal, and linear reasoning component of the mind. It fulfills the function of screening incoming stimuli by categorizing, assessing, and assigning meaning prior to allowing passage to the right hemisphere of the mind. The right hemisphere, which functions as the non-critical, holistic, non-verbal, and pattern-oriented component of the brain, appears to accept what the left hemisphere passes to it without question. Consequently, if the left hemisphere can be distracted either through boredom or through reduction to a soporific semi-sleep state, external stimuli, including hypnotic suggestions, are allowed to pass unchallenged into the right hemisphere, where they are accepted and acted upon directly. The result may involve an emotional reaction originating in the lower cerebral region, sensory motor responses requiring involvement of the cortex, and so on. Both the sensory and the motor cortices of the right cerebral portion of the brain contain a sequence of points known as the homunculus, which corresponds to points in the body. Stimulation of the corresponding area on the cortex causes an intermediate response in the associated portion of the body. Consequently, induction of the suggestion that the left leg is numb, if it reaches the right hemisphere unchallenged and is referred to the appropriate area of the sensory cortex, will result in an electrical reaction being generated that will induce the feeling of numbness. Similarly, the suggestion that the person is experiencing a general feeling of happiness and well-being would be referred to the appropriate pleasure centers located in the lower cerebral portion or in the cortex of the right hemisphere, thereby inducing the suggested feeling of euphoria. Finally, suggestions such as one that informs the hypnotic subject that he enjoys enhanced concentration or powers of memory would be responded to in the right hemisphere by accessing unused information storage capacity normally held in reserve as a result of left hemisphere selection and control processes. This aspect will become significant in the context of the gateway process, when attention is given to examining the way that hypnosis may be used to accelerate progress in the early stages of the gateway experience.